Hey, welcome everybody. Okay, I'm not going on camera today. It's not one of those days. I'm just chilling here, having a little bit of morning coffee. And I kind of started doing this presentation the other day that I came up with. Let me turn this off here. There we go. On logic. And what I kind of want to do today is kind of give a very brief, very simplistic overview on propositional logic using truth tables and tautologies. Now, again, let me reiterate here, I'm not a logician. My experience with logic goes back to the early 80s when I was working with TTLs and CMOS circuits, if people know what those are. And so I did have to learn a little about Boolean logic. I did get a radio communications license when I was 13. My ham radio license was KB6HSZ, which was a novice license code. I don't think they had the technician low code before then. But intrigue feelings. I think your presentation slides are a bit up. I don't have slides. These aren't actually slides. Yeah. So I mean, I also worked at Radio Shack for like 6 years. I started off as an associate, which quickly became an assistant manager. Then I became a store manager for many years. So I mean, I've worked with quad operational amplifiers. I've worked with CMOS 555s, TTLs. So I have a little bit of understanding of gates. I used to build a little bit of circuitry where I would have LEDs and bistable, monostable type of oscillators and things of that nature that used a little bit of a logic. But I kind of wanted to explain in this presentation the basics of propositional logic, how it relates to kind of Boolean logic and truth tables. Because a lot of people have, a hard time understanding what a truth table actually is, and then what a tautology is, what a contradictory is, what a contingency is. And so I just came up with these truth tables. I have a couple little notes from places that I've read. And I thought we would work together to kind of go through these and see if we can fill in these truth tables with each other. So welcome, everybody. And let's kind of get started here. So we're going to start with some of the laws of logic. Oh, I got people messaging me. Hopefully they're not telling me they can't hear me, because that would suck right now. Okay, no, that's not it. So let's start off with some of the laws of logic. One of the basic laws of logic is called the law of negation. And this is a very simple truth table. This is just a not. Either something is the case or it's not the case, right? And we use this all the time in a lot of our videos where we say, it is the case that it's raining, or it's not the case that it's raining. You should fix the screen so it's visible in its entirety. What is visible entirely? I'll be scrolling down here. This is a page here, feeling. It's a Word document. Well, it's a Libra Office writer. So yeah. So I mean, it's not slides. So that's why. All right. So the way this would work, and again, I'm not a logician. Take what I say with a grain of salt. Although I have a professional PhD in mathematics in the live chat right now. And if I make any errors, hopefully he'll point that out to me and go, "Steve, you stupid poopy head." So the way you work this is very simple. To take the negation, you basically take the opposite. Now, in propositional logic, not even is odd, not odd is even, not true is false, not false is true, not 0 is 1, not 1 is 0. Okay? So there is no middle ground to be had between true and not true. If something is false, it is not true. Now, I have been on Facebook groups where a lot of people don't understand that, and they start reading things that they've seen on Philosophy Stack Exchange or in other places, and I've had a couple people literally quote them verbatim, even though that was called plagiarism, because they didn't cite them. I've seen it before, where they're talking about non-classical logic, where you have things like truth gaps and truth gluts, where you don't necessarily have propositions that are either true or false. And so in certain other types of logic, not true does not necessarily mean false. This is not those types of logic. This is simple propositional, or called sentential logic. It is true or false. That's it. If not true, then false. If not false, then true. That is classical logic. And so when people are saying, well, if just because it's not true, it doesn't mean it's false. Yes, it is. In classical logic, unless you're talking about some other type of logic, which again, if you're talking about a non-standard type logic, you kind of need to let people know. If I say, hey, look, I'm dealing with dialetheistic logic or pair-consistent logic, where you can have true contradictions without principle of explosion, then I have to let people know that, right? If I'm in a different type of logic, it's like, for example, in intuitionist logic, there's no such thing as double negation rule. So you have to let people know that. Now, I think this is actually going to be a part one, because when I was going over this last night, I was like, man, there is kind of a lot to go over, even though it's really basic. This is like what you would learn from a very intro level course. This is not high level stuff by any stretch of imagination. But there's a lot of stuff that could be talked about. And so I think that this might be just part one, and we'll see how it goes. And I'll ask you guys in the end whether you want me to do part two, which I'll probably do anyways, because, I don't listen to you guys. I do this because I like to do it, and that's all. And I hope people like to learn. And hopefully I'll get it right. So at the end, we'll get a little critique from the PhD in math, and we'll go from there. So let's start with the law of negation. Not is, again, these are a Boolean type of statement. So not A is the negation of A. So going by what I said, where you either have true or false, if something is not true, there's one other option. It be false. If something is not false, it must be true. That is the truth table for not. Or for negation. Okay, now we'll get into some of the more complicated truth tables coming up here. But for a very simple truth table that you start off with, you just have true or false, false or true. And this is your event space, right? You can only have P is true, then is not P is false. P is false, not P is true. And think about this as heads or tails. Same thing. If it's not heads, it's tails. If it's not tails, it's heads. For a fair coin. And what we mean by a fair coin is it a coin that is evenly weighted distribution-wise and cannot land on the edge and must have an outcome. This is a hypothetical ideal coin. So when we say a fair coin, we're talking about a coin that is hypothetically flipped, that you must have a actual quantized outcome of either heads or tails. That's your event space, heads or tails. In that event space, you have two enumerations. It could be heads or be tails. Same thing here. You have it be tail of true, or you have it be false. Okay? Now, I'm going to come back to the law excluded middle and the law of contradiction, because we have to kind of go over these conjunctions first. Again, I just kind of like put these things in here. So we're going to come back to these real quick as soon as we kind of look at the operators. So one of the operators you have is a disjunction, which is or. And or is called an inclusive disjunction. And what that means is that if either of the operands, if either of the atomic structures, which is the P and Q, so P and Q are propositions, right? P it could be any proposition. It could be the proposition the sky is blue. Q could be the proposition that my car is red. Anything that is truth apt, anything that has a ability to be true or false, P or Q can represent. These are statements that have truth values. So it's asking, in this particular case for this gate, this OR gate, what is the relationship if you have P or Q? The way the OR inclusive OR works is that the truth table is always true if and only if at least one of the conditions are true. Okay? So on this truth table, if only if one of the conditions are true, you know what? I got to see my chat here. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to pop my chat out. I'm going to pop my chat. There we go. I popped my chat. All right, so given the conditions that at least one of them has to be true, right? We can kind of look at this and say, oh, okay, well, is it the case that one of these is at least true here? Yeah, well, both of them are true, right? So that clearly is true. How about this one, where P is true and Q is false? Well, yeah, one of them is true. P is true. That has to be true. How about this one? P is false and Q is false, or true. Yeah, one of them is true. That has to be true, right? I don't know if these are going to line up very well. Yeah, whatever. Now, how about this one? Here's a case where P is false and Q is false. It doesn't meet the criteria that we have for the OR gate, which is one of the disjuncts, one of them, the atomic propositions, P and Q, have to be true. So in this case, it is false. That's the truth table for the OR. Now I'm going to ask the live chat. Does everybody get that so far? I know we're going through this really fast, because again, this is really simple stuff. This shouldn't be very complicated. But we'll get through some of the other gates. But we're going to start the very basic gates, because again, these conjunctions are used in relationship to each other to have a closed syntactic system, where you can pretty much have any truth table given these types of operators. You put them all together and you can find out whether something is a tautology or contradiction by using various types of conjunctions or negations or disjunctions. So These are the basic ones, okay? So or is very basic. So now that we know that or, we can look at the law of excluded middle here, okay? The law of excluded middle in propositional logic says that a proposition must be either true or false. It can have no other truth value. Now, there are other logics out there, like three-valued logic or multi-valued logics or multi-values logic. You can call them many different names. But that would make the proposition either true, false, or U for unknown, okay? But in classical logic, unknown doesn't matter. It means that we just aren't aware what the propositional value is, but it has still a truth state to it. It still has a truth value to it. So, given the law of negation, right, because if you notice here, this truth table is the same here, we can come up with the law of excluded middle, saying that P or not P. Now, we know the or disjunction is always true if one of the disjuncts is true. So, given P is true and not P is false, this must be true. In this one, P is false and not P is true. In this case, it must be true. We have what's now called a tautology. A tautology in this case is when the truth values in the last column all are true. Now, there are different types of tautologies out there. There are different ways of describing or defining a tautology. This is just merely one way. There's another way in logic that I'm not that familiar with, but we're going to go with how basically, if the truth value is such that the last column is true, it is a tautology. And we have tautologies all the time in even the English language. We don't recognize them a lot of times. Like if I say I'm going outside to watch the evening sunset, that's a tautology. Why? Because it's always true. The sunset's always an evening, right? We don't have a morning sunset. That would be a contradiction. Right? So when we say certain words, a lot of times we have a lot of phrasing that is tautological, right? If I say, hey, I have a new innovation that I'm going to put to market, well, that's a tautology, right? Innovative means new. So we do run into tautologies quite often, probably more than you realize. But in this case, we're going to be talking about tautologies where in the last case here, in the last column, it is all true. So the other one we know from the principles of logic, the laws of logic, or the principles of eternal verities, basically these, I don't really consider them laws. They're called laws of logic, but in reality, if you really want to get technical, they're called principles of logic. They're axioms. So the law of non-contradiction is basically the and of the law of negation. Now, we're going to have to go down here to find out how we do an and. So let's go down here real quick. Now, the AND operator says that the truth value is always true if both the disjunctions are true, if and only both the disjunctions are true. If they are not true, if both of them are not true, then this statement here, P and Q, must be false. So both of them have to be true. So in this truth table, P and Q are both true. This is actually true. In this particular one, where P is true and Q is false, it is not the case where both are true. This has to be false. In this case, P is false, Q is true. This has to be false. And of course, if they're both false, that means that the conjunction has to be false, because and only allows truth to be the case if and only if both the disjuncts are true. So that's the truth table for and. Right? So now we can go back and we can look at the law of non-contradiction. So if P and not P is only true if both the disjuncts are true, then this is clearly false, because both these are not true. This is clearly false. Now, there are symbols that we represent this. There's a tack symbol, which is like a little perpendicular symbol where you have a line at the bottom and a little orthogonal line in the middle that bisects it. That's called a tack. That means contradiction. You'll see that often as well. There's other symbols for it, but this is basically a contradiction. You cannot have P and not P, right? And it makes sense, right? It either rains or it doesn't rain. You can't say it rained and it didn't rain at the same time. That is a logical contradiction. Why? Because the truth table for the and is both false for this particular truth table for the law of negation. So now, just based on the law of negation, I've gotten two other laws of logic or principles of logic out of it. Right? Fairly straightforward. It's actually pretty simple if you think about it, right? So let's kind of like see if we can build upon that, right? The law of non, by the way, this isn't actually the law of non-contradiction. It's stated in a tautology. Remember we said the law a tautology is if the last column is all true. So we have to really state the law of non-contradiction in a tautology in order to make it appropriate, right? So let's do that real quick. So we've already got from this truth table P and not P, which we realize are both false. Oops. And now we have this little statement here saying the negation of this particular statement. Okay, now you do distribute a negation just like you normally would, right? Because you just distributed it across the parentheses, but you change the and to an or to an and if you do it that way. But we're just gonna negate this entire statement right here. Okay, so if this is false, what's the negation of false? True. If this is false, this statement P and not P is false, what's the negation of P and not P? True. Now we have a tautology. Now we have the law of non-contradiction because now we have a statement which you can have, which is negation of P and not P in a tautological form, which is the last column, all T's. How cool is that? Now, come on, that's a little cool, isn't it? I mean, come on, live chat. Tell me if that's not at least a little cool that we got from a contradiction, we got a tautology just by putting in a negation of that particular statement. I find it to be cool, but you know, I'm easy to please here. I'm easy to like go, wow, that's awesome. All right, let's move down here. Hopefully you can see this. Let me look on the outside here. You guys are awfully quiet today. I don't know if you're like, you know what I think it is? When you guys are actually like really interested, you guys get really quiet. And that's kind of cool. You guys aren't talking about other stuff. All right, so hopefully you can see this. I mean, let me see. I'm on my outside. Is this showing the exclusive order right now? Yes, it is. Okay. Yeah, people are absorbing stuff. I can tell. It's great. All right, so this one's a little more complicated, the exclusive or. It is represented in many different ways. All these different symbols down here can represent the exclusive or. I particularly, for me, I use the arrow down, okay? Or I sometimes will use this symbol here, right? But you'll see this symbol an awful lot in logic, this little like circle with lines through it. But for me, I use arrow down, but it doesn't matter what symbol you use. It really makes no difference. Now, the way the exclusive or works is a little bit different. Second. Okay, the way the exclusive or works is that this is only going to be true if and only if both P and Q are true or false. Okay? So if you look at the way this is defined, this is actually defined. The P of exclusive or is defined to be, this little symbol here means defined, to be not P and not Q. Which means it is the conjunction of not P and not Q. In other words, this can only be true if and only if P and Q are both true or both false. Yeah, a lot of books use that little world type symbol. You'll see that very common. So if you're looking at a logic book, you'll probably see that symbol an awful lot. This, I'll put it in the live chat too. This symbol here, you'll see a lot. But again, I'm just using the down symbol. It doesn't make a difference what symbol you use. But we're going to try to construct what the exclusive or truth table actually is. You know what, did I put an exclusive nor in here? I don't think I did. Oh, I did. Okay. Actually, you know what? I said it wrong. That's the exclusive nor. The exclusive or is if it's true, if and only if both of them are not true or both of them are not false. That's what it is. I'm sorry. My bad. So let me rephrase that. The exclusive OR gate or the exclusive disjunction is only true if and only if both the disjunctions are well, one of them is true, one of them is false, but neither are true or neither are both false. So let's actually go through this, because again, this is one of those most complicated. I even mess it up sometimes, like I just did. So let's actually just figure out what the truth table is for this. And we have ways of checking if there's a truth table checker you can actually use. So let's look at this from the OR gate. P or Q. All right, well, this is always true if and only if one of the disjunctions is true. So that one we know is true, correct? This one, P or not Q, should be P or Q. This one we know is true. This one has a truth value of Q, so we know one of the disjunctions is true. This one's both false, so this one has to be false. So we can go back here and we can look here. Does this match here? Yeah. Truth, true, true, false. This is the same as the OR for this particular one, the OR. But we know that's defined as the negation of P and Q. So let's look here. You know what? I should have put not P in there, didn't I? All right, we're going to have to do it in our heads. Usually I'll put like not P in there so we can actually look at the truth value. But I didn't. So we're going to have to do this in our head. So not P is going to be false, and not Q is going to be false. So false and false is equal, for an and is going to be false, right? And not P, which is going to be false, and not Q, which is going to be true, is going to be at least one of the disjunctions is going to be true. No, let's see here. This is why I usually put Q and not P in there. Matter of fact, I'm going to add this in here on the fly if you don't mind. This is how easy it is to do. Rows, column after, because I want you guys to see how this works, because it does eliminate a lot of confusion. I'll just throw it in here. So not P and not Q. All right. So let's fill these in real quick. So not P is obviously going to be false. This is going to be true. This is going to be true. This is going to be false. This is going to be true. And this is going to be true. For not Q, we have false, right? Because we're just taking the negation of the Q here, right? I'm just making it look pretty. Trying to get this line on here is hard. There we go. Oh, did I lose my P? I did, didn't I? I see, trying to make these lines. We're gonna undo that. There you go. Make these all the way out there. There we go. All right, perfect. Woo! All right, so not Q is going to be T, and not Q is going to be F, and not Q is going to be T. So now we have a way of actually figuring out easily the conjunction. And remember, the and is going to be, oh wait, and's down here, right? Only if both of them are true, right? So in this case, wait, is this right here? Inclusive or and make sure I got this truth table right. I'm pulling up the truth table just to make sure that I get it right here. All right, let's see here. So I know what the truth table is supposed to look like, so we have to make it look like that. It's only going to be where the case where these are both not true or both not false. So the truth value is going to be false, true, true, and false. And since P and Q down, this is the same thing as this by definition. That's what the truth value should actually look like. But I'm trying to see how I made a mistake here somewhere. Because this is a conjunction here, right? So this should only be true when both conjunctions are true. So how did I get that here? Help me out here, guys. Where'd I make a boo-boo? See here, false, false. Oh, this is going to be true. That's actually going to be true, right? Because both these are false. Yeah. It's TFFF. No, it's not. It's not for not for an or. For exclusive or, it should be false, true, true, false. Oh, you know what? I think I know I made a mistake. Yeah, I know what I did, I think. Give me a second here and I'll fix this. No, maybe I didn't. Because that's not the right definition. Yeah, it's not XOR. It is. You're right. That's not the right definition for exclusive or. This is actually XNOR, I believe. Yeah, the truth table for XOR would be TFFT, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually doing the truth table for that one. All right, so let's see if we can fix this on the fly. This is why we double check everything. Okay, so let's just kind of move this down here and get rid of that. We're going to take this truth table, we're going to copy here, and we're going to do this the right way. We're going to construct it from scratch to see how we get it. How about that? That's the correct way to do it. This is why we fix our stuff. We're going to do this on the fly here. Insert. And now we'll put P and the arrow down symbol. There we go. Does that look right, Doc? Oh, I want it capitalized. There we go. All right, so now let's see if we can figure this out, the exclusive OR. Okay, so exclusive OR gate is only true if both of the disjunctions are not the same. Okay? So it should be the opposite of this, right? Because it's the exclusive OR. So it should just be the opposite. No, it's not actually the opposite of the OR. It should be just when both of the disjunctions are not the same. All right? So if it's defined as to be they're not the same, these are the same, right? So this has to be false. These are not the same. This has to be true. This is not the same. Has to be true. That has to be the false because they're both the same. There you go. Yeah, we did it. Yo, nice. How do you like that? On the fly, we changed this up. So, Doc, check that out. Make sure that that is the correct truth table. That should be the correct truth table for exclusive OR. It's where you have only a true if and only if both the disjunctions are not the same. So are we correct on that? Are we good to go? We moving on? Yeah, it's not the opposite of OR. Yeah, I got that. But I want to make sure we got it from going from scratch, because this is why it helps to understand how to build these truth tables, right? Because if you get really confused like I just did, boom, I just start from the beginning. Okay, what are we at? Where do we know? What do we got to get to, right? So by knowing what the exclusive OR is that it's only true if both of them are not the same, then that has to be the correct truth value, truth table. So, all right, I want to make sure that that Dr. Pi in there is correct. Is going to give us a thumbs up there, all right, and then we'll move on to the next one here. All right, we're gonna skip this right there. We're gonna go down to some other negations and see if we can figure them out the same way. Okay, so let's go with the NAND gate. Okay, the NAND gate would be similar to the AND, but it's going to be if and only if both of them are not true. Okay, so the NAND gate is only going to be true if both of them are not true. So let's see if we can figure that out. So P and Q, if both of them are both true, we know that's true. P and Q is only true if both of them are true, so we know that's false. False, and false. Oops. Okay, so this should be the same thing as we have above here, right? Which it is. So this truth table here should be the same truth table as AND. So now we're going to take the NAND of it. We're going to take the negation of that, and that should give us the NAND. All right, Dr. Pi says yes, the truth table is correct. All right, he's a PhD in math, so we're going to get his to double check this stuff. All right, so let's take the negation of this. Now, again, there's something called De Morgan's rules and laws where you could take the negation and you distribute it over and you change the conjunction. You change the OR to an AND or an AND. No, the NAND gate is only true if and only if both of them are not true. Sorry, not false. If both of them are not true. So it should be always true unless they're both true. If they're both true, then it should be false. So by taking the negation of that, of this column here, we get false, we get true, and we get true, which is what the NAND gate is defined to be, right? It is only false if both the antecedent and the consequent are true, which is P and Q. And we found that by just taking the logical negation of the AND. So that is a correct truth table for that. So that's the NAND gate. Okay, so the next one is one that people find the most amount of difficulty with, other than the exclusive OR. It is called the imply gate. There's a gate called imply. It is conditional implication. This implication is such that it's always true if the consequent is not false and the antecedent is true. So this is always going to be true unless you have a true P and a false Q. This is just by definition. Okay, this is how it is defined to be. So when you're doing the conditional implication, the truth table is going to be true, false, true, and true. So this is always true, unless you have a condition where the P is true and the Q is false. Somebody says you have a negation of a disjunction, not a negation of a conjunction in the last column. This is, oh, you're right. You're right. Good catch. Good catch. See, you guys are paying attention here. Yes, you're, see, because I'm just taking the negation of this column, so it should be, what I did was in my head, I kind of just applied the De Morgan thing, and you reverse those. So, is this correct now? Because this should just be the negation of this. I just prepped this last night, so. Again, I just kind of go through these things, right? But I do them on the fly, so you guys can catch these things. But you did. And now, is that correct now? We good on the NAND? I'm just taking the negation of this column here. We good? All right. So let me know if we're good on that. But okay, so back to the conditional implication. What you see in modus tollens and modus ponens, you see if B, then Q, right? We'll see this quite a bit. And what that actually means is if the P is true, then Q is true. That can also mean many different other things. I've heard it be said that if P, then Q, P implies Q, Q follows from P, Q if P, I've even heard things like Q whenever P, P is sufficient for Q, Q is necessary for P. So I've seen a lot of different ways this can be understood. But this is a very huge mistake that people make in modus ponens when they don't understand the first premise. The first premise is a conditional. The premises are not P and Q in modus ponens. Those are the atomic structures. Those are the things that form the premise. But premise one in a modus ponens is the conditional. This is why we say the conditional is always true unless the antecedent is false and the consequent is false and the antecedent is true. So if you have a condition where both P and Q are false, then those conditions for the cannot be met and the statement is true. This is confusing to a lot of people. This is when I say things like 1 plus 1 does not equal 3, therefore 2 plus 2 does not equal 5. Both P and Q are false, that conditional is true. And one way I've actually seen it explained, and I like this, and see what you guys think about it. Think about it as a promise. Let's say I promise my daughter that I'm going to take her to Disneyland if she gets an A in math. So that is conditional. If you get an A in math, I will take you to Disneyland. So let's go through the truth values and see what happens if those conditions are met or not met. If she gets an A and I take her to Disneyland, then the conditional is met. I kept my promise, right? If she gets an A and I don't take her to Disneyland, then I broke my promise. The conditional is false. If she doesn't get an A and I take her to Disneyland, I haven't broken any promise, right? Because she didn't get an A. If she didn't get an A, I have no promise to fulfill. Therefore, the conditional is true. If she doesn't get an A and I don't take her to Disneyland, again, there's no promise to be fulfilled because she didn't meet the conditions. Therefore, the conditional is true. Does that make sense? So if you think about it as a promise, the promise can only be fulfilled if, or only be false if and only if she gets an A and I fail to take her to Disneyland. That's when the conditional fails. Any other case, it's true, because if I fulfill my promise, it's true. She gets an A and I take her to Disneyland, it's true. If she doesn't get an A, no matter what, if I take her to Disneyland or not, there's no promise to be had there. So the conditional is still true. I think that's a really good way of thinking about that, personally. Let me know what you guys think about that. If that helps you guys understand what the conditional implication is for modus ponens and modus tollens, let me know. But I think it's a really good way of understanding that. All right, moving on. Material implication, okay? This kind of is like an exclusive NOR gate. And what a material implication is that when both the antecedent and the consequent are true. Okay, so one sec here. Or both false. Okay, so this means there's a biconditional there. So if both of them are true, both of them false, this gate is true. Again, some of this stuff you just have to know that. I mean, you could derive these things, but if it's for a material implication that if it is the case that both of them have to be true or both of them have to be false, then the material implication is true. So in this particular case, it's true. One of them is false here, and one of them is false there. So these have to be false. And both of them are false, therefore the biconditional is true. So exclusive NOR gate is true, false, false, true. Segmentation fault, nailed it. Yes, absolutely correct. Right, and again, you can go through these things and you can say, okay, let's make an OR, let's make a NOR, and let's make an exclusive NOR. I probably should have done that to build this gate, but I didn't. But you could, and I'll leave that to you guys to do. If you guys want to actually build this gate, you should be able to do it by taking the OR, taking the NOR, and then taking the exclusive NOR, right, with the negation. And it should come up with this truth value here. All right, so let's try to do some exercises here. This is where the fun comes in. All right, so we're going to try to figure out what the truth value of this statement is right here, right? And again, there's something called a truth checker, a truth table generator. If you type in truth table generator on Google, then you should come up with a truth table generator. I find it odd to use because they don't let you use an OR symbol. You got to actually type in OR, which is weird. I don't know why. So if somebody can explain to me why that doesn't allow for V as an OR, let me know. But you can check to see if that truth value is going to be correct or not. So let's kind of build this and see what this comes out to be. Now, there's three things. There's tautology, there's contradiction, or there's what's called contingent. If it's not a tautology, it's not a contradiction, it's contingent. So I asked a question earlier, which we'll get to after this one. This statement here, if it's a tautology on Twitter, most people got it wrong. So we're going to build that and see how that works. So not P. Well, this is true here in P column. So not P is clearly the negation of that. Not P is clearly the negation of that. We have false here. The negation of that is true. Here we have false here. And so the negation of that is true. So now we build the column for the not P. Now we have a conditional. Well, going to the conditional here, again, it's only going to be true. Only going to be false if and only if the consequent is false and the antecedent is true. All right, so let's look here. Here we have P implies Q. So the only case here where this is false is where you have P is true and Q is false, which is that one. So every other case, this has to be true. All right, so did we build that column correctly? Should have T false, true, false, true, true. True, false, true, true. Okay, so that looks right. Now we're going to put the conjunction in there. Okay, so the conjunction of not P and the conditional. So now we have not P here and the conditional. And an and is always true if and only if both the disjuncts are true. So this one has to be false because both of them aren't true. This one has to be false and hang on. Okay, so sorry. All right, sorry, and yeah, so I had the wrong symbol there. All right, so this one is the P is false, Q is true. This one has to be true, right? This one is P is true and Q is false. So this one has to be false because not P is true, and no, this one has to be true. Wait, it should be false. No, it's not false. It's false. Hang on. Let me start from scratch here. I had the truth generator and I did it in there, but I'm looking at it and it does it reverse, so it sucks. So this should be false. This one should be false. This one should be true, and that one should be true. Is that right? Segment fault? Did I get that right? Because this is the negation, right? So here we have the negation of P. We have the conditional. In this particular case, it's only going to be second line true, true. This is only going to be true when both these are true, right? So here we have true, here we have true, here we have true, here we have true. So this conjunction of not P and the conditional is only going to be true when both these are true, which is only the last two lines. Oh, it's correct now. Okay. All right. You know what? There's a delay. Sorry. Because I'm looking at this going, wait, this has to be correct. Because the conjunction is such that it's only true when both of them are true. Well, here's the case where both of them are true on the bottom. Here's both of them are true here. These are both false. These are both false, so there has to be false, false, true, true. Okay. Woo! Yeah, between the way the truth table generator does it, it starts off false, false. It has it the opposite, right? I don't know if you've seen the truth table generator, but if you want to go check it out, it goes false, 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 true, true, false, true, true. And so I have to like reverse it in my head. All right. Now, this is not a tautology, by the way, right? Because these are not all true. Let's go to the next exercise and see what we come up with. All right. The conditional, we know this is always true unless the consequent is false and the antecedent is true. So this one has to be true. This one has to be false. This one has to be true. And this one has to be true. There we go. Now this one's kind of interesting. This one's actually Q implies P, right? Right? So it's a little bit different here. It's Q implies P. So this truth table has to be just the opposite of that. It has to be, if false, false has to be, well, actually, well, it has to be the same thing, actually, because now the P becomes the consequent, right? And Q comes the antecedent. So in this case, it's only when P is false. So this is going to be false. This is going to be, hang on. This is going to be false. This is going to be true, and this is going to be true. Because now this is reverse, right? This is the inverse, it's called. And by the way, I think that I'm on part 2. Let me know in the comment section if there's renders. But I think on the second part, I'm going to go over converse, inverse, contrapositive, De Morgan's rules, and other types of rules for logic. I think that'd be kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't like the fact the truth table generator does it differently. I always start off with true, true. This is how I just learn truth tables. I always start off with true, true. It starts off with false, false, which is going to be upside down, and so I got to reverse it in my head, and I hate that because I'm not good at that stuff. Okay. But if you notice here, like I said, this is only going to be false when now P becomes the consequent and A is the antecedent, which is going to be in this case where Q is true and P is false, right? So now I have a condition where I have true, true, false, true, and true, false, and true, true. Now I'm going to look at the conjunction of these, right? So this is only going to be true if at least one of these is true. Okay, well, here both are true, so that qualifies. Here this column is true, so that one qualifies. Here this column is true, that qualifies. And here both of them are true, that qualifies. Oh, look, what do we have when all the last column is true? What do we call that? A tautology. Now, like I said, I asked this question on Twitter for the specific reason to see if people can recognize it's a tautology. Few people got it right, few people got it wrong, people didn't know the difference. Now you won't be able to mess it up again because you can look at the truth table and see, oh, look, given the conditional implication, P implies Q, and given the conditional Q implies P, by forming the final truth table by the conjunction, it always has to be true. This is an actual tautology. Isn't that cool? So when you want to determine if it's a tautology or not, do the truth tables. You know, I think it's cool. I like this stuff. I really do. Matter of fact, when I did electronics and, you're building gates and you had to go, okay, now if I put this, I had a digital logic probe. Digital logic probes are cool, right? Because it tells you if it's high, low. It tells you if the gate's triggered or not. And I used to do a digital logic probe. I even had an oscilloscope at one time. My granddad, fun fact, my granddad owned a electronics TV repair shop that my dad used to work with. And he basically, when I was 15, I used to work with him, construction. I was building A-frames and floor joists and pouring concrete, believe it or not. And, he paid me, also allowed me to drink some beer. It was Kansas. Nobody cared back then. Yeah, okay, I was a bad boy. I was 15 drinking beer. But you're allowed to with parents, grandparents. And one day he let me into a shop, which was, long since closed, and he let me take whatever I wanted. He's like, I'm just going to junk this stuff anyways. Take whatever you wanted. And I took things like flyback transformers. I took step-up transformers. I took, ceramic things. I remember taking selenium rectifiers. You name it, resistors galore, capacitors, whether they're, I had, some air capacitors, some ceramic capacitors. And back in those days when I had to get my radio communication license, you had to know at least what farads were and, ohms. And like I said, I had my radio communication license when I was 13. So I understood the basics of radio communication. I understood the basics of circuitry. I knew how a diode detector worked. I could build a germanium diode radio crystal oscillator kind of stuff. And I understood a little bit about how an oscilloscope worked. I didn't really understand it as well I did later on in life. Don't get me wrong. I understood like the ratios, 3-2, when you have like 60 hertz, then you'd have 20 hertz and 30 hertz, and you can tell by the nodes on the X and Y, what your signal was. But harmonic frequencies and angular frequencies and things when we got into actual wave propagations, a hell of a lot more complicated. And yes, I did take that kind of physics, believe it or not. It sucks, and I never got any good at it. Sine, cosine, magic, to me, trigonometry sucks. But that's a little tangent. That's a little fun fact. So I did, like I said, I did learn a little bit about Gates. All right, so let's try to figure out this one here, the material implication. Now, a material implication is a bilateral condition, right? So this little double symbol, you actually see a single as well. I like the double for the metallurgical symbol. I don't know if it's just me. I don't know personally if there's any difference between the metallurgical symbol of the double arrow as a single arrow. I don't think so. But I just prefer when you're dealing with a metallurgical symbol like this, I tend to use a double. And so this is called a material equivalence. Okay, when we say something has a logical equivalence, we mean that the truth tables are identical. Okay, and that's important because that means we can substitute one thing for another. If the truth tables for the conditional are the same for the truth table of not P and Q, they are materially the same. They're interchangeable with each other. It's called logical equivalence. So let's see if we can prove that to be the case, okay? So, not P. Well, that's just a negation of P. That's false. That's the negation of P. That's false. That's the negation of P. That's true. And that's the negation of P of true. Wow, that's simple. All right, then we have the conditional implication. Well, this is only false if the consequent is false. Okay, so that has to be true. Here we have the consequent is false. That one's false. Here we have the consequent is true. So that one has to be true. True. Made a mistake there. And this one, the consequent is false, but the antecedent is true. So that one has to be true. Because again, it's only going to be the case where the antecedent is false, the consequent is false, and the antecedent is true. When both of them are false, it's actually called a vacuous case condition. When you hear a vacuous case, that means that the antecedent and the consequent are both false, which means that the implication is true. Again, think of it as a promise. If my daughter doesn't get an A, I don't have to take her to Disneyland. Whether I do or don't, whether that's true or take her to Disneyland or not, there's no promise of that my commissive to be broken or not. I only fail to fulfill my obligation as a promise if and only if it is true my daughter gets an A and then I fail to take her to Disneyland. I'm telling you, that is a great way to think of a conditional implication. If you get one thing out of this video, get that out of this video. When you see a modus ponens, that's how you can do it. All right, so now let's look at the conjunction here of not P and Q. Remember, the conjunction is only true if and only if both of the disjuncts are true. That's not the case here. Right? So this one has to be false. I'm going to trouble check this. So, all right, this one has to be false. This one has to be false. Has to be false. Right? This one has to be true because the negation of P is true here, and the Q is true. So this one has to be true, and both these are true here. Let's see. Wait, is that right? It has to be false. Yeah, this one has to be false, right? Because not P is true and the consequent Q is false. This one has to be false, right? So that's going to be the not P and Q. That's the truth table. So false, false is going to be false. False, true is going to be true. True, false is going to be false. And true, true is going to be false. Okay, I've double checked and my truth generator is correct. All right, now let's get the final material implication. Let's see if this is actually, we expect a tautology, right? Right, we expect it to be a tautology. So the conditional is this, and the material implication is this. So there's really no way to figure this out. You just have to kind of know, I guess, huh? Because this is going to be true, this is going to be true, this is going to be true, and this is going to be true. I don't know how you would figure that out, though. I've just thought about that. I know material communication, by definition, is that. But, I mean, how would you actually work that out? Because this has to be true. Let me think here. Somebody says I'm treating the disjunction like a conjunction. Well, this is oh wait, yeah, okay, this is or here. Yeah, yep, okay, I gotcha. Yeah, gotcha. All right, so let's just fix these here. So this is going to be an or. Okay, so this would be false, false has to be true. This false, true has to be true. False, true, true, false has to be false. And true, true has to be true. Right? Because if this is the case where it's only one of them has to be true, in this particular case, this one's true on this side, this one, neither one of them are true, this one, both of them are true, and this one, both of them are true. Therefore, it's true, false, true, true. Is that correct? And segmentation fault, let's see if he has the same thing I have. False, false, true, 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 false, false, true, true, yes. True, false, true, 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 false, true, 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 true. Okay, yes. So segmentation fault, what you just put it there is exactly what I have in my truth table. That is correct. And I just checked it in my truth table generator. So the material implication, we know that this has to be true because by definition, these are equivalent to each other. And we can prove that they're equivalent to each other because right here, they're exactly the same. True, true, false, false, true, 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 true. Because there's a logical connection there, because they're logically equivalent, this right here is logically equivalent to this must be true. This material implication must be true because they're logically identical to each other. You can substitute P implies Q with not P or Q. Essentially, Leon, you said no. Did we get an error somewhere? Because I have exactly what segmentation fault has, and I checked it on my truth table generator, so it should be correct. So let me give you 2 seconds to update that to see if there's any errors on this. I'll wait. Let me check my live here. Essentially, Leon, are you on board? Did we get it right? Is it correct? I want to make sure everybody's on the same page here. He's not responding. All right, let me ask segmentation fault. Oh, okay, never mind, you're correct. Awesome, awesome. That's why I like doing these things. And I do like them doing on the fly because, I'll make mistakes too because, I haven't really looked at this stuff in a very long time. I did this last night. And this is what I'm saying. I'm no expert in logic. But to me is, look, if I can at least get the basics down and explain the basics, then anybody else should as well, right? This is not high-level stuff. And people have a lot of times not understanding simple propositional logic. This is simple propositional logic. This is literally intro to propositional logic. So yes, I'm well aware that I made some errors, but we understand the concepts. You understand the concepts, you correct those errors. And I think that's the big takeaway. If you know the concepts and something that doesn't sit right, if it's not looking right, you can say, hey, there's an error here. And because the logic is objective, right, you guys can go, oh, it's objectively incorrect. Let's fix this. That's one thing I do like about logic. It is the case where you can say, look, you can logically verify this. And so that's one of the reasons why I do this. And I think on part 2, I'll go over inverse, converse, contrapositive, De Morgan's laws, and some other stuff. But I think this is a good intro, at least kind of get you how to build a truth table and how to determine a tautology versus a contradictory, which is like we had up here, right? And then how to make a tautology out of that. There are the gates out there, like, I said, there's exclusive and other things you can build. I'll leave it up to you guys if you want to practice that, but I'm going to leave you with 2 statements here and see if you guys figure it out. Okay. So, can you guys see this? Yeah, it shows on the screen. So I'm going to leave this guys up to you guys. Is the parenthetical not P and Q or P and not Q a tautology? And is not P and not Q, write these down, and P and not Q, or P or Q a contradiction? Now you can obviously cheat, you can just copy and paste in here, and I'm going to double check these right now to make sure they're right in my truth table generator. But you have to, again, you have to change the V to an or. You have to actually write an or. Not sure why. All right, so that one, yes, I know what that one is. I double checked it, and you can do this on Twitter. So let me know on Twitter or in the comment section, and I know if that's I know if the top one is a tautology, contradiction, or a conditional. And the bottom one, I'm double checking. I know the bottom one is a tautology, contradiction, or a conditional. So I have checked these. All right, I hope you guys like this presentation. Again, I want to keep it down to an hour. I think this is fun. I like doing this kind of stuff. I do them very quickly. Like I said, I haven't looked at this stuff in a very long time, but going over it last night was pretty cool. Once you kind of get it down, it comes back to you pretty quick, I guess. As long as you kind of understand the concepts, I think you could probably build any type of propositional truth table, as long as you know the basics, right? Or, and then you start building exclusive or, and figuring out if something is a tautology or a contradiction or not. It's all a matter of the connectives, right? And all matter of how you put them together. Some of the things you just have to memorize, like the imply gate, which is the conditional implication. You just have to memorize that it's always going to be the case where it's true unless the consequent is false and the antecedent is true. And again, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people mistake on the modus ponens. They think if P and Q are both false, then it's not true. They think it's unsound. Well, no, if both of them are false, then that premise happens to be true. That's how you build a modus ponens, by the way, right? I mean, think about it. If your implication is true, where you have both the consequent and the antecedent false, the implication of premise 1 is true. And then if you say something like, it is not the case that is this, if it's not the case of the consequent, then you can say it's not the case of the antecedent, which is modus tollens, right? All right, well, Resist the Idiocracy did the answers for the exercise. All right, we'll put them on Twitter, man. If you guys aren't following me on Twitter, that's your guys' problem. You guys should be following me on Twitter. I'm going to keep this short because we have another video that Cheshire is going to be doing soon. So show me your, no, you got to show your evidence. Show me, there's my Twitter. Show me your evidence on Twitter. Tag me in it. And put hashtag tautology, so we all get on the same page. So let me know. Let me see your work. And then, like I said, I'm looking forward to doing part 2 because I think part 2 is going to be interesting because when you start manipulating some of these things and using ways of determining where the logical proof is valid or not, it's kind of interesting. I use a program called Natural Logic Checker. It's kind of predicated on Finch logic, if you guys have ever heard of Finch logic. It's a way of kind of putting logic together where you can say, okay, I have P, I'm adding a Q premise, therefore I can say P implies Q, or a conditional or an exclusive or, where I can do a disjunctive syllogism and say P or Q, not Q, therefore P, right? You can do all these different things in logic to use these different rules, which I'll go over in probably part 2, and then you can apply those in the natural logic checker to see if your proof is actually valid or not. You can say, okay, I'm by elimination of 1 and 2, by introduction of 1 and 2, by modus ponens of 1 and 2, by conditional application of 1 and 2. You give the rule of inference and then the lines of it as the justification, and it literally tells you if your logic proof is valid or not. Matter of fact, I did one to show that you can actually derive the law excluded middle from the law of non-contradiction and the law of non-contradiction from the law excluded middle by using various rules of inference. You can actually derive one from the other. I actually did this in the logic checker and made sure that it was correct. I have that in my blog on the laws of logic. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Again, I am not a logician. I'm not a math guy. I am not an electronics guy. Although like I said, I do like electronics. I did have to take electronics. Even in the Navy, they teach you BEE. So everybody in the nuke program has to learn a little bit about electronics. You have to understand how circuits work. You have to understand, resistance and impedance and capacitance and inductive reactance and all these other different types of nice stuff that you learn in radio communication, and especially when you're cross-training and you're looking at trying to learn things like ESWAS training and radio comms. And the military has these books that you can get, and they're basically like everything you need to know about radio communication in a nutshell if you wanted to be in that rate. And we all cross-train, right? We all cross-train. So I would love reading the BEE books and the electronic books for the ETs, and they would read things obviously about the machinist mates and the mechanics and how machinery works, because machinery is just as complicated as electronics in many different ways. But I hope you guys got something out of this, and I'm glad you guys caught the errors, because that's what it's all about. It's about showing you guys that if you understand the concepts, you can spot the mistakes, right? And you can apply this as critical thinking. When you see somebody says, okay, this is logically valid, you go, wait, no, it's not. What's your rule of inference? Or you can say, look, that's a tautology. Dr. Pi says, I'm not a logician, but I like to learn more about the foundations as well as philosophy in general. Yeah, and I love that kind of stuff. So I think, like I said, in part 2, that's what I'm going to be going over. So I'm glad you guys watched this. Let me know what you think about it. And go watch Cheshire's video. That I think she has at 1:30 Pacific time. Somebody had asked, when are you going to make a video about dialtheism? I don't know. I have a blog that I wrote called something like Example of a Married Bachelor, where I use dialtheism. I could kind of go over what the principal explosion is and what a true contradiction is, but I'm trying to keep into classical logic, right? Because I think if people get the classical logic stuff down, then they can start branching out into first order logic and predications and other forms of logic. Now, first order logic for me is very difficult. I am not good at first order logic, not by any stretch of imagination. Very rudimentary understanding of first order logic. If I attempt to do something on first order logic, I'm going to have somebody kind of help me with it, because it's very difficult. I think people need to start the basics. Mind your P's and Q's. Learn what the P's and Q's are, the truth values, and learn how to make truth tables from it. Because when you learn the truth tables, you kind of can show visually to somebody that, look, it's a tautology. Boom. That's all true. Right? So I think start from the basics. All right. So Cheshire is getting ready for her video. Everybody go over and watch that. She put it in the video description. And once again, thank you guys for watching. I enjoyed this, and I hope you got something out of it. Good night.